Hello, my name is Julie and welcome to Friendathon. Welcome to part one of my two-part Friendathon vlogs. If you're unfamiliar, Friendathon is my readathon based on reading your friends' tastes. It all started because I had a lot of friends on Bookstagram and I was constantly talking to them about books, but then never actually made an effort to read their favorite books, and there wasn't a readathon like this, so I made it. This has been a pretty small readathon the last several years, but it has been so much fun that I always look forward to it every summer. And this year, again, same as last year, I'm going to be running it with my friend Katie from Forevermore Pages and Imogen from Emmy Reads. They are two of my best friends on Bookstagram. If you're unfamiliar with how Friendathon works, I have my announcement video in the cards that shows all of the rules, all of the prompts, and what my TBR is. I have had one change from that original TBR, so let's talk about the books that I'm reading very quickly. I'll give you a synopsis of the books when I have actually started them and give you a better vibe, but the first prompt is to read a book in the genre of their best book of 2024 so far. Emmy's best book was If We Were Villains, which is a dark academia, so I'm going to be reading Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This one's actually pretty short, so I'd like to be able to finish it in one day if I could, so I don't know if I'm going to try to do that today or tomorrow. Prompt number 2 is for them to pick a book off of your TBR that they have never heard of before, so it's kind of like, what would they read off of your TBR? And Katie picked out Stories of Your Life and Others by Ted Chiang. This is a sci-fi short story collection that inspired the movie Arrival, which is my favorite movie. But this is 8 short stories, so I'm going to attempt to read a story every day. I always love reading a short story collection during a readathon. I think it works really well. Prompt number 3 is to read a book that they believe is underread, so it has very few readers on Goodreads. And off of Katie's list, I picked Ready or Not by Cara Bastone. This is a romance book about a woman who got pregnant from a one-night stand. This is one of 2 audiobooks that I have that I'm going to be reading during the readathon, so I'll probably read one audiobook in one vlog and one in the other. Prompt number 4 is to read a book from an author that they have given 5 stars to in the past year, and for that I am reading Lessons in Chemistry. I actually do have the dust jacket just up here. I have already started this. I had an extra day to read beforehand, so I read 100 pages of this 400-page book. So I don't know if I'm going to be finishing that straight off or if I want to start something else and come back to it. Prompt number 5 is the hardest one, and that is to read a book that has some sort of tie to their profession. Katie is a journalist, so this is the book that I changed. 1, I could not get my hands on that book. 2, honestly, I didn't feel like reading it yet because I read the first book not too long ago. And 3, it's also a St. Martin's Press book, and I am going to start taking place in the St. Martin's Press boycott, which is only a publicity boycott. It's not boycotting the books, it's just boycotting talking about the books online and giving them free publicity because of an employee's reaction to Palestine that the company never did anything with, and also their interactions with influencers and how there is information that they seem to have about influencers' demographics that they shouldn't have, and that there is potential for them to be discriminating against other people. So more information to that below, but I am instead going to be reading Behind the Beautiful Forevers by Catherine Bow. So Catherine Bow is a journalist who won the Pulitzer Prize. This is her one book that is a nonfiction about poverty in a Mumbai undercity. I was recommended this by John Green, and then later a friend of mine who's from India and said that this was extremely accurate to what the area is actually like, or at least how it was at the time. Prompt number 6 is for them to make a prompt for you, and Imogen gave us the prompt to read a book set in the year that your friend was born. All 3 of us were born in 2001, and in fact, Imogen's birthday was yesterday, so I'm going to be reading the most popular book that was released in 2001, and that is Life of Pi. I'm going to be listening to this on audiobook. And the last prompt is to buddy read a book, and I spent a lot of time trying to find a book that all 3 of us had on our TBRs and we had access to, and we decided to all 3 read Stardust Thief, which is my book club's pick of the month. This is a chunky one. It's almost 500 pages, so I think all of us are reading this last so that if we don't finish it, we can finish it just after the readathon. But I did the math. I'm planning on reading a story out of this every single day, and that means otherwise I need to read an average of 130 physical pages per day other than the short stories. Either I can try to read exactly 130 pages per day, or I can read more on the weekends and less on the weekdays so that I don't put pressure on myself when I'm working. That would mean I would read 150 pages on the days that I'm not in the office. I'm going to push myself to read as much as I physically can. So today is Friday, August 2nd, the first day of the readathon. It is a telework day for me, so I can get a little bit more reading done than usual, but I still do have a job. So after I'm done working, I'm on my break right now, I am going to read the first story in Stories of Your Life and Others, and then I haven't decided whether I'm going to continue with this or attempt to read this in one day. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. We'll see. I'll bring you with me. I have read the first story in Stories of Your Life and Others. This is a short story collection. I believe this was originally published in 2002, which I didn't know was that old. And Ted Chiang has won a ton of awards on like the world scale for his sci-fi stories. The Story of Your Life, the title story, did inspire Arrival, which is my favorite movie of all time, which is in turn inspired by Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, which is one of my favorite books. So I have read the first story of this, and it is called Tower of Babylon, and it is obviously inspired by the Tower of Babel. This story is interesting because it is set in a setting in which like the Hebrew interpretation of the way that the universe is set up is correct. So like flat earth and geocentrism, like literally the sun is observed to move around the earth in this as people get higher up in the tower. The Tower of Babel is being built, and our main character is someone who has been hired to be a miner. There are going to be people who are going to try breaking into the vault of heaven that they have found. I feel like with most short stories, you know, you're waiting for that punch at the end of the story, and this did have a little bit of a punch. I thought it was interesting. It didn't blow my socks off, and there's not much I can say about it because I don't want to spoil it. I definitely had to look up what something was, but I think it's effective. And I have also gotten a third of the way through my 150 pages I need to read today, but that means I'm at page 150 in Lessons in Chemistry, so that's over a third of the way through. This is about a woman, Elizabeth Zott, in the 50s, who is a chemist, but reluctantly she ends up as the host of a very popular cooking show and inspiring a bunch of women to go into scientific fields because of the way that she talks about cooking and food. And this has formatted itself interestingly. So the first chapter or so is like showing exactly how she got to the cooking part and explains like the big scale that her cooking show is on, and then immediately it zaps back to the beginning of her story. And I totally get why it did that, because if you didn't have that opening thing, the synopsis of the book wouldn't occur until well into it, so that makes sense. I am really liking the writing style. It feels very reminiscent of comedy of that time period, like the sort of, it reminds me of watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel in the way that it's written is kind of laughing at the characters or being comedic. Well, I don't know, it feels like it was meant to be a TV show, and it has become one. I'll watch it eventually if I ever get that streaming service. But yeah, I'm really liking that writing style that is extremely witty, and how we're following this character who, the reason that she has come into any success as a woman with so many things in her way has been due to her obstinance, and how she does not stand for a single thing that is being put in her way because she knows it's not fair, and like wants other people to see that it's not fair in a way that I do think is fairly autistic coded. But she was with a man who was a famous chemist as well. They were partners. He ends up dying, she ends up pregnant, and she is a single mom trying to take care of her kid who she didn't even plan on having. And I'm excited to see where this goes in terms of talking about her going into motherhood, having not expected it. I really liked how this has talked about science so far. I didn't go that far into chemistry. I went more on the physics side of things in my STEM degree. The one thing that I have thought was weird is that we're getting sometimes the perspective of her dog, and the dog is like really smart. The dog at least believes that he's interacting with her unborn child, and I was like, is this Dune Part 2? Like, let's keep going. I have 100 pages more to read today, so I will get over halfway through the book if everything goes to plan. It is now Saturday, day 2 of the readathon, and I did hit my page goal last night of getting to 250 of lessons in chemistry. I did read that 150 pages, so I am on track to only read my regular page goal during the week, and I am hoping to finish this to complete my reading goal again. So I am going to take myself out to a little cafe that I haven't been to before nearby, have some brunch and a smoothie, and get some reading done. I finished my story for the day. This one was called Understand, and it was about a man who nearly died and was put into like a vegetative state because of the accident that he was in. And he was given an experimental shot that was supposed to increase brain function to get him back to his regular state. And what happened when he kept getting these injections is that he surpassed his regular brain functions, became a genius, and then starts surpassing that. And this one was good. I can definitely tell that this is the same guy who inspired Arrival in that one because of its focus on language and the fundamental building blocks in which humans interact with each other. But it also did feel like some of those action movies where someone takes a pill and they like get 100% of their brain function and they're a superhuman now. It ended in a fairly predictable way, so it didn't really blow me away, but I did like it more than the first story. But I don't actually have that much going on for the rest of the day. I did that on purpose. I have been so busy the last couple weeks, especially with social engagements going on, and then I had book stuff going on top of that. Like getting out that last vlog on time was ridiculous. I'm gonna try to finish my July wrap up, although I think that's kind of unlikely. Maybe I'll post it early tomorrow. I need that to be up before I can post this, and I would also like this to be posted while the readathon is still going on, if that's possible. But other than that, I can try to check off some of the readathon bingo prompts. So on top of doing the reading stuff, I do have a bingo board of random challenges you can try doing. Some of them are about reading. So like one of them is like read a new to you author. So that's not a prompt of the 7 books. That's just if any of the authors is new to you, which I believe every single author that I'm reading is new to me. And then there's also stuff that has nothing to do with reading, and there is Instagram post challenges. So I already posted my TBR. That was one of the challenges. And then the next one was to make a post featuring all of your favorite colors. So red, pink, and green. Then I have to make a post featuring a book all of us love. I have to make a post featuring books that they recommended to me, a post featuring a book that talks about friendship, which I think I'm gonna do Percy Jackson for that. I was really struggling to come up with books that are purely about friendship. So like not a sibling relationship and not a friendship that turns romantic. Otherwise, some of the fun activities I can do is have one of their favorite foods or drinks. I did buy some Prosecco because Emmy said that she was having that for her birthday, which was the day before the readathon. Another one was read in their favorite spot, do one of their favorite hobbies, watch something that's their favorite, so like movie, TV show, YouTube. So I'm gonna check off a couple of those things today. Let's get back into lessons in chemistry. It is nearly the end of day 2, and I have finished lessons in chemistry. This is really good. I think I'm giving it like a 4.5 or something like that. I feel like this book could have had like, I don't know, like 25 more pages. I actually thought there were at least 20 more pages because online it says it's 404 pages, and then I didn't check how many pages my edition was. I think we could have seen even more from Elizabeth's perspective. I feel like in the second half of the book, we spent a lot of time viewing her from the outside, and not really spending time in her mind. I really loved any scene where we were at the cooking show. I thought that those showed very succinctly how she was affecting women's lives and encouraging them for chemistry and everything. Also, I did bake brownies, and she bakes brownies in this when she's feeling upset. I also was very glad that this did not have a secondary romantic plotline. I also think that this definitely is intending for Elizabeth to be autistic. There are 3 very common traits of autism that she exhibits on more than one occasion each that makes it very clear to me that she's supposed to be autistic coded. And since this does take place through most of the 50s, yeah, no, a woman was not going to be getting diagnosed with autism. So I did like seeing her relationship with Calvin. I thought it was fun, the community that she gets to put up around herself, especially as somebody who feels like she doesn't have a community around her. Very great recommendation, and I'll be recommending it to a lot of people because I do think it is very well loved for a reason. Definitely a crowd pleaser. First book of the readathon done, and I am primed to try reading all of Piranesi tomorrow. I don't know if it'll happen. We'll see. Day 3 is here, and last night I actually read today's story just early. It was only 20 pages, so that's the shortest one so far. That one is called Division by Zero, and it is about a mathematician who she was admitted to a psychiatric ward after having a mental break, and her husband is taking her back after she has been released. The story alternates between 3 points. Like, the first point will be an actual real life thing about math, specifically people trying to prove the consistency of arithmetic, basically that just 1 always equals 1 and 1 will never equal 2. The second section will be from her perspective. The third perspective will be from the husband's perspective. And then we'll go back to the top and continue. I wasn't 100% sure what I was supposed to get out of that. Like, that one was probably the one that I was most engaged with out of the 3 so far, but I don't know how it was supposed to make me feel. I think I'm gonna look on the internet to see what people are saying about this story. Today is Piranesi Day. I'm gonna try to read all of Piranesi. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, I don't care. I have to read at least 150 pages of it, which is over half. I did finish my rough cut of my video yesterday, my July wrap-up, so I am going to be doing the final cut and posting that today. I am not planning on leaving my apartment complex today, and I'd like to keep it that way. Time to get some stuff done. Maybe I can try watching the Olympics. I don't have like the proper streaming service for the Olympics, but I have one that has like partial coverage, so I guess I can see what's on. It's the afternoon. It's very rainy outside. I've had the Olympics live stream in the background. I don't have Peacock, so I can't watch everything, but I've been watching the stream on Sling. I saw kayak cross, which I really wanted to watch, and it was super interesting. I saw some beach volleyball in the round of 16, and now it's team fencing, which I didn't know team fencing existed. And I have started Piranesi. I didn't start it until 2 p.m. today, and I did want to try reading this all today, so I don't know if that's happening, but I did finish part 1, which was 20 pages, and it's, I think, the shortest of the sections. This is about our main character, who is called Piranesi but does not believe it is his name, who lives in this strange house that is infinite. There is like an upper floor and a lower floor and a middle floor, but no matter how long you travel in any direction, there's still house. It's very strange. There are statues everywhere, and there are very few other beings. There are 13 skeletons that he has found, but there's only 1 other living person who he calls the other, who is older than him. And the other keeps saying that they're finding things for this great knowledge that he's never really clear on what it is. And the 2 of them meet up regularly to discuss their findings. It's also strange because just about every single noun is capitalized, which took a minute for my eyes to even adjust to, but I think I'm gonna be able to lock in and get a lot of this done today. I am 85 pages into Pure Nessie, which means I have finished part 2, and I am a third of the way through the book, and I'm over halfway done with my required reading for the day to get to that 150 pages. And we are definitely getting some more information about things around Pure Nessie, particularly the Other. We are reading Pure Nessie's journal of everything that he encounters. Pure Nessie's speech and Pure Nessie's writing looks the same. Pure Nessie speaks kind of stilted, and the Other speaks like a normal person. I feel like from here on out, I'm probably going to be pretty vague because we're getting into spoiler territory, but I have very good feelings about this, and it's going by quickly. I caved and I bought Peacock for the month so I could watch the Olympics, which is ironic considering the two sports that I most wanted to watch coming into the Olympics were gymnastics, which is finishing its last events tomorrow, and women's rugby, which again is over. But that means that I do have access to the ending of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I have not watched, even though it's one of my favorite shows. It's also one of Amy's favorite shows, so I could watch it for her. And also, one of Katie's favorite shows is Parks and Rec, so I could watch that for the challenge. It's day 4. Last night, I did not finish Pure Nessie, or I would have updated you. I still haven't finished it, and I'll update you when I do. I kind of decided that I wanted to pace myself out a little bit more. It was physically possible for me to have finished it in one day, but I kind of just wanted to sit with it a little bit longer. I finally read Story of Your Life from Stories of Your Life and Others, which inspired Arrival. And I kind of want to talk about the comparison between the story and the movie. I'm going to do that with the least amount of spoilers possible. Also, I have the Olympics on. I'll turn that off for now. The movie and the story are very similar. They have two really big changes, but the core of the plot is very similar, making it a really great adaptation. The idea of Story of Your Life is our main character, Dr. Louise Banks, is a linguist professor, and when a bunch of different alien craft land on Earth, she is hired by the American government to be one of the people who is trying to interface and communicate with the aliens to try to figure out what they want, because they have just basically parked themselves on different places on Earth and done nothing. And so we follow Louise as she is learning more about the aliens and their language. I think by a mile, this is the best story so far in the thing. I think it works on a sci-fi level of having interesting principles. It works on a human thematic level. I thought that this story was well written, well paced, and well explained. I loved a lot of the scientific principles that were going on and how they helped inform the sci-fi principles of it. There are two huge differences between the story and the movie. I'm going to talk about them in minimal spoilers. But my number one thing is I would advise someone, if they're interested in both, to watch the movie first, because the movie makes the plot, the end game, a surprise. But the story begins with the ending. And that changes how you as the reader absorb the information. In the story, you're more trying to figure out how do we get to the point of the end game, but in the movie, you are both trying to figure out what the end game is while figuring out how they get there. And that makes it so interesting on a watch and a rewatch. Arrival, again, one of my favorite movies of all time, and one of the main reasons it is one of my favorite movies of all time is because it is a movie that rewards multiple rewatches. There's some books and some movies that hinge on a huge plot twist, and once you know what the plot twist is, it ruins it. The thing is that the story, you know what happens. The form and the content match each other, which works, especially for a 50-page short story. Having those two things work together is great. But I think the change that the movie made of changing the format and the order of events serves the purpose of the format of a movie much better. There is a second choice that is made. I will be as vague as possible. It has to do with the child. They made a much more extreme choice with the child in the movie in a way that is so much more emotional than in the short story. And that, I believe, is just a straight improvement. And the movie does add more plots, it adds more politics and like worldwide scale to the actual story. And I do kind of like the adaptation of the movie better. To me, this is a perfect adaptation of a fantastic story that I believe if I had read this for the first time, I still would have called it a 5-star, but I think it is a little bit more effective if you do not know the ending the first time. That was Story of Your Life. I am now 50% of the way through the book, over 50, I believe. The next story is the longest, so I might not finish it all tomorrow. I might rearrange my reading. I want to talk about Lessons in Chemistry just a little bit more because I felt like I repeated myself and didn't actually add anything new, and I feel like I missed some things. This book perfectly talks about how women had so much violence perpetrated against them in the workplace and how much of a dangerous decision it was to work and how that was a necessity for a lot of different types of women. But it also goes into detail about how opportunities are systemically not afforded to the people who are not a group in power, i.e. white men. Opportunities are not given from the very beginning of someone's education and then going into higher education, going into the job market. People are at the end of their careers, people who were discriminated against didn't have the same records and important things done as the people who had power. In this book, specifically talking about white women and white men, but we can see it applies to multiple identities, that because opportunities are taken away at every single point, that the farther you go, the larger the differences are. Even though Elizabeth is much smarter than the people around her and her work is stolen, because of that, she's not able to get a PhD because of the things that happened to her, because of the violence that is perpetrated against her. Even though it's a historical fiction, it obviously still applies to today because there is not 100% work equality across all the different identities that a person can have. And I just think that was super important, and I didn't think I talked about that enough. I think I was talking too much about other things in the book, and all of those things do make it up. Still a great book, and I 100% understand why it got 5 stars from Emmy and why so many people have been loving it. Actually, the person who bought it for me, my aunt, who was formerly a chemical engineer, she is getting into reading now, and that was her favorite book of 2023. It has touched a lot of people for a good reason, and one day I'll watch the show whenever I have that streaming service. I have neglected to mention that I have started Life of Pi. I knew very little about Life of Pi, except for it's philosophical and that it's about an Indian boy who is trapped on a boat with a tiger. I did not know, for one thing, that this was written by a white man. I have 2 different books that are related to India that are written by white people in this video. Oops, I didn't mean to do that, but I don't think that people have had issue with representation in this book. But this is about a main character, Pi. His name is Piscine, and he got teased for his name as a kid, so he went by Pi. He's from Pondicherry, India, and his parents run a zoo. We have not gotten to the part where he's on the boat yet. The main thing that's going on for him is Pi is very interested in religion. He grew up in a house that really didn't deal with religion, but Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity are all active in his area, and he ends up converting to all 3, and that has bothered a lot of people. He just wants to understand God, and people have a problem with him not subscribing to one religion. He has talked against like fundamentalism and seeing things as not a metaphor, but as literal. This is also framed in an interesting way. There's an author's note at the beginning where he combines fact and fiction to tell how he came across the story. And then in the story itself, Pi is telling his story to a different person. I think this is a really interesting way to look at religion because it is sort of questioning some of the parts of organized religion. I'll let you know when I have more on Pure Nessie or Life of Pi. It's dark out. I don't know how well you can see me because a hurricane is approaching. So instead of being in the office for 4 days and then at home for 1 day, it looks like I'm gonna be in the office for 1 day and at home for 4 days. I did finish Piranesi. This was really good. I think that this is constructed really well. I was interested the whole time. The writing was really interesting, and this world that we're inhabiting is something that I really was interested in exploring. I understand why people are really vague when they talk about this, because it definitely starts out in a way in which you as the reader know nothing and you're slowly investigating, so almost anything you could say about this is a spoiler. I'm probably gonna give this around a 4. I'm gonna say it didn't end up like blowing me away at the end. Kind of once I got the gist of it, I like wasn't surprised anymore. I was still having a good time. I got through it quickly, but I was wondering if like another thing was gonna happen. But I feel like a lot of people are gonna pull different interpretations out of this. I definitely have a thing in mind that I think is tied to this. Solid read. And I also finished Life of Pi. So I think I left you, he had just gotten on the boat. Had he gotten on the boat yet? Pi is in a shipwreck. He is the only human survivor. There are several animals, including Richard Parker, the tiger, that are on this boat with him as he is stuck in the Pacific Ocean for over 200 days, just trying to get to safety. You know, the part of the story that's like about survival and persistence. He knew he wanted to continue on. It was just a matter of making it happen. I did speed up the audiobook as it went along, so it feels to me like the second half of the book was way shorter than the first, but that's literally just the perception of the audiobook. It's representative of Faith, the story that he's telling about his journey. In the last section of the book, I was like, oh, okay, I get what this book is trying to do. I get what the message is, what the connection here is. It feels like it's Pascal's wager. It was basically a explanation for you should believe in God because if he doesn't exist, there's no punishment for it. Obviously, what Pi goes through is awful and harrowing. I was expecting some things to stay unexplained. And I think that this does give an explanation that I was kind of like, you've made it not a metaphor to the reader anymore. You've explained some things away that I kind of was like, eh. I thought this was good. I get why people like it. I don't think it was incredibly impactful to me. I'd be interested to see the Broadway play because I have heard really good things about the puppetry and everything that they do. It's really cool. The figures are really intricate that are the animals. But yeah, I thought this was good. I don't know how much I'm going to think about this after having finished it. I'm gonna end the vlog here and everything else will be in my part 2 vlog because I am starting 2 new books today. So I will talk to you about those in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to follow me anywhere, my Instagram, my Goodreads, my Etsy, all of that is in the singular link in the description. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you'd like to be notified for when part 2 of this vlog comes out. Thank you so much for watching.